by our worldview and by our values. Something that operate in our mind. And then the second dimension of the theory is relationship building. So theory try to relate or try to connect what we see into a proposition and clarifies the relationship of the observed phenomena. And then formal proposition. So this is the constructing a theory, the phase of constructing theory. We make it into a formal proposition. And then transforming even. So we transform the theory, or we test the theory into practice. So in the case of Islamic economics, we try to make it, how do we see theory in Islamic economics? Theory in Islamic economics does not only attempt to describe the world of fact as it is understood in the positive economics, nor does it attempt to merely describe an ideal state of affairs in economic realities, normative. The theory also attempts to prescribe, change, and transform the economic condition, transformative. So, based on our readings, there are three dimensions of the theory. It will describe facts. It contains certain values in the theory. So it is the normative, and also there is a purpose in the theory. So theory we try to persuade us to make some changes in realities. So not only describing the realities, this also contains certain normative elements. It also propose or persuade us to do some changes. So transformative. So three dimensions the theory is Islamic economics. That's why later on, when we develop methodology of Islamic economics, so the methodology is quite different, whereby we try to evaluate the consistency of a theory with the doctrine, the consistency of a theory with the logical thinking, and the consistency of a theory with the facts, with the realities. And then we conduct tests, and then we try to see whether a theory has an ability to transform the phenomena. So transformative dimension of a theory has been discussed by some scholars, such as Nabi, then including Asad Zaman and Bakir Sadar. Bakir Sadar also even says that Islamic economic is not a science, Islamic economic is a system. What he means by a system is that you see the phenomena is not correct phenomena, it's not right phenomena. So we have to change the phenomena first, then we develop the science. So theory is a statement of relationship between unit observed or approximated in the empirical world that aims to clarify and explain some aspects of how the relationship works and transform the realities into certain ideas or objectives as a message and stuff. So this is our post definition of theory. Then the question is how we develop theory. But this is the early discussion. We'll discuss this later on more extensively in the second part. So methodology of Islamic economics is developed based on three considerations. The first is the worldview. So worldview, values, and realities. So this will influence the kind of methodology that we are trying to propose. And then the source of knowledge. And then the object of study. Okay, so the these three dimensions, will influence the scientific criteria in terms of acceptance or rejection of theory, and then in terms of how we determine a good and reliable theory. And then scientific procedures, mechanism of test, mechanism of evaluation, and mechanism of transformation. So, we'll discuss it one by one. Worldview, values, and realities. So why these things need to be discussed? Because economics, in the simple world, it is not value-free disciplines, including a theory. It's not value-free things. So it has been infused by or preceded by what Schumpeter says or Hebron says, a vision or an ideology. So in UIA we call it a worldview. These doctrines are a set of complex of free conception, reflecting prevailing beliefs held by scientific community, she said by Sartre. And then it is absolute frames of reference where society perceive and interpret the arrangement that order their lives. And then it provides the raw materials for the analytic effort of economics. Doctrines are unexamined visions of social reality established by the philosophers of economics. They constitute the hardcore, which must not be rejected or modified and protected from falsifications by a protective belt of auxiliary hypotheses, said by Chapra. They provide a set of principles governing the entire code of life, which is timeless framework that at the same time function as a built-in mechanisms for fresh thinking on new issues and problems, so that solution can be found out, said by Mana. So, yeah, the capitalist economics contains ideology that this kind of economics try to promote and persuade us to believe with that doctrine. So Spengler also says that modern economic is built upon certain doctrine, which is the doctrine of capitalism, that according to Spengler is the product of Western experience or realities, with some of its origin dating back to the Greco-Roman and medieval world. So modern economics are therefore unique to a particular belief and developed based on particular experience. In this case, Western experience or Western in the capitalist context setting society. And therefore, some scholars says that economic has been used not only as a science, but as a supporting faith or as an ideology or as a religion. The theory is a means of supporting the doctrine. So we have doctrine, we have theory. So theory is a kind of tools or means to explain the doctrine or to support the doctrines. And then we try to convince the scientific community, and then the scientific community will believe. So that is the first component. And then the methodology or the theory building is also how we develop theory, how we develop methodology of economics. It will depend on the object of study or subject matter. So we have one article with Prof. Aslam on this subject matter, how Islamic economics define or construct their subject matter. So the conclusion is that in this paper, the subject matter, when we try to construct a subject matter of Islamic economics, there are certain characteristics. The first is it is inherent. So basically, this three characteristic we got it from Abul Ala al-Mawdudi. The first is inherent. So what we say is a problem. This must be part of the problems in our life, in human life. And when we say economic, it doesn't mean that this problem is independent of other problems in human life. So that's why the second criteria or the second characteristic is holistic. It is viewed in a comprehensive perspective, holistic dimensions. So the problem of economics is not only about the individual satisfaction. We have to look at in the larger picture, including society, including nature. And then persistent. It will exist as long as human being exists. So the statement says that problems will never be solved. Because if it is solved, then it cannot be, no longer be our problems. Then we have to find another problems for this disciplines. So it is a kind of perpetual problem. So that's why we construct problem based on two dimensions. First is economic problems are conceived based on the life reality or SDR, economic problem SDR. So in the literature, the references, try to gather the references. Most scholars say that what we mean by the economic problem SDR is that there are scarcity, that human wants are unlimited. So that is based on fact. But the second dimension is important. Economic problem as conceived based on the life guidance, life objective, as they should. Because this second dimension of study, or the object of study of economic is that after we solving the problems, then what? After we solving the problem of scarcity, for what purpose we are trying to solve the problem of scarcity? So this will bring us to another dimensions that we have tried to also solve in our life. So that's Takeldin, Tajuddin mentions that instead of playing down with scarcity or abundance, one of positive economics, the central economic problem is a matter of moral principle. That is what we should do in the face of appearance of economic problems due to scarcity or abundance. So the problem can be scarcity, can be abundance, or something else. But what is important is what is beyond this. So the effort is not only dealing with the how questions in the technical sense, but also the how question in the philosophical sense. That would invite why and for what purpose. Okay, and then so this will connect to the third dimension of the theory or building, namely the source of knowledge. Source of knowledge. So Islamic epistemology then recognize multiple sources of knowledge from where we can derive our economic knowledge and theories. The first is al-wahyu, or divine revelations, the nas, Quran and Sunnah, and then akal, and then comprehensive reading of the nature and ourselves. So we so afak also the nature. We have to try. That is our source of knowledge as well. So we can gain knowledge by comprehending referential texts and from a series of data based on the statistical and historical references of realities and experience. So let's see here, it's a very good statement by Sawi, our teacher. Says that reason and revelation are but a twofold life, revealing the same object, a twofold expression of one, and the same original reality rooted in the essence of things. So we don't want this source of knowledge to be in conflict, but should be in harmony, because they are trying to reveal the same object. So the object is one, but we try to see from different angle or different dimension and aspect. You can see it through wahyu, through nas. You can see it using our akal. You can see it by comprehending the nature of the facts, the nas, the behavior. So that's why Fatih Hasan Malkawi proposed this approach of epistemological integration. So what do we mean by integration? It's not to integrate the source of knowledge. We try to integrate reason, revelations, and senses. How we can integrate this to produce later on the truth. So those sources of knowledge are not only legitimate but should be connected. One cannot be understood without reading the others. And to have a thorough explanation, we have to take all the inputs from all these sources of knowledge. So we have to try in our methodology, methodology of Islamic economics, should be able to propose a fine combination of this source of knowledge. Rational economics, they have only one source of knowledge or two sources of knowledge, the facts and the reason. So that is the kind of. So how we can develop this epistemological integration will be the methodology of Islamic economics. But we will discuss it in the second part later on. Source of knowledge, methodological queries in the theory building. So these are the four main questions. How we derive knowledge from the source of knowledge, and then how to link our means of acquiring knowledge, the mind and the senses, to the source of our knowledge, the revelation, the world, the human self or behavior. How do we authenticate or confirm or validate theories derived from the source of knowledge? And then how do we evaluate the theories of this? This is the subject of methodology discussion. Problem with scientific paradigms, the scientific method, is that this is the problem. Why the scientific method try to remove the metaphysics or religion and ethics from economics by applying natural science method, including mathematics to economic phenomena. So this is in the Western tradition, why they have experienced this enlightenment by not believing anymore in the religion, and then later on implicate to the excluding ethics also, because ethics is very much determined by the religion. So it replaced the metaphysical perception of realities by rational causal explanation of the world. So the paradigm of metaphysics-based ethics has been replaced by physics-based ethics. So that marks a new scientific world conception. Then this implicates to the theory development in the economic. How economic theory is constructed is based on observation of physical, material, and observable realities and how they interact. So the theory is concerned with the means and instrument of explaining phenomena. So instead of the ends, so it's concerned on the means, how to, instead of why or for what purposes. So the methodology then is preferable classifications and positivism. This is how they develop the theory. Can just everybody just can understand this. But in the Islamic economic theory, then how? The Islamic economic theory is expected to develop a holistic explanation of economic phenomena and the dynamic relationship of economic entities such as individuals, state, institutions, and society. So a theory must have a socio-scientific explanatory. So it's not only scientific, but kind of socio-scientific or even moral scientific explanatory based on the revealed rational and empirical source of knowledge, and having a balanced proper ethical perspective in achieving the noble objective of Sharia. Naqvi says that a theory in Islamic economics makes its ethical religious connection explicit at the very outset of its theory building, which also marks spiritual consciousness in economic activities and economic analysis of science. Yeah, still have time? Three objectives of theory building. So, what is the objective? The purpose of having a theory. So the purpose of theory building in Islamic economy is to produce a theory that can explain economic realities. This is the first objective, theory and explanation. And then to promote unification of doctrine, values, facts, and realities. So this is the second purpose of theory and unification. And then to prescribe suitable policies to achieve certain goals as promoted by Islam. So this is the third objective of theory and transformation. As discussed, the first one is theory and explanation. So I think we know this. Everybody that theory try to explain in a logical perspective the necessary connection of economic phenomena. But in terms of explanation, we learn also from the critics in the mainstream economics methodology itself, whereby in methodological reductionism, economic realities are represented only by partial knowledge due to the compartmentalization of realities. So this is the realism's approach, whereby economics cannot explain in a massive perspective because of the methodological reductionism. For example, when they explain the behavior, non-behavior, look at only the individualism. When they explain the economic phenomena, just look at only the material dimensions of reality. So there are two things that we should aware in developing Islamic economic theory. Is that an explanation Islamic economic theory should not be reductionist and should not be isolation by detaching one entity from the whole. So this is the importance of why we learn the Islamic world, try to provide us a comprehensive perspective. And then the theory and unification. So the purpose of a theory is not only to explain, but a theory will try to unify, try to see everything in a unity perspective. Umar Chapra mentioned this very interestingly. Islamic economic theory should be both ideational, and factual in content. So there is an ideal, ideal and fact. Islamic economic theory shall attempt to link the Islamic doctrine, principle, and values with practical reality. Then theory building Islamic economics try to link also principle and ethos of the Quran, as well as the practical realities or the historical data of human life experience. This very interesting books written by Chapra, the teacher of economics, Islamic perspective. And then theory and transformation. Again, Chapra also one of the scholars that try to promote Islamic economics, not only talking about to go from we have to go from what is to what ought to be, from ideational to practical, from doctrine to practical realities, and vice versa. So some economic theory building aims to produce economic theory that would assist in prescribing workable policies for goal realization. Okay. Then this will happen, of course, theory. So because and practice, there will always be the gap, and how to bridge the gap. This is the process of scientific development. So if there is no gap, then our scientific also will become very dry. So this is the challenge. Of course, the theory cannot answer everything. So once we try to connect theory and practice, then this is the role of scholars that try to develop another theory, So this endeavor will enable Islamic economists to explain, predict, and persuade more effectively and to suggest more confidently the necessary measure to go from what is to what ought to be, from additional to factual, from doctrine to practical realities, and vice versa. In one of our articles, we discussed this about the spectrum of realities. This is we are moving what's God and not, and God is even the source of truth itself. One of the ayat is mentioned. We are moving from realities, from waqi'iyah to haqiqah, and then to haq. So it's not only explaining the waqi'iyah, the realities or the facts, phenomena. And waqi'iyah can be true and it can be false. So In the word of Fakir Sadar, said Wahnya al-Fasidah. So false realities, because of he compared it with the values or with the doctrine. So if we compare facts with the doctrine, then there are some facts is not facts, or it's not right, can be false. So and Islamic economic theory tries to also persuade that we have said just now of Aqiyah, and then we move to Akikah. So this is kind of facts that is suitable with the doctrine. The fact and doctrine now becomes become unity. Then it will lead to harm. So in the works of Masud Alam Chowdhury, it says that this is a secular process, and this will take some time. Tauhidic string relation, that is his proposed methodology, TSR, by this very dynamic kind of things, moving from facts to the heart. Okay, I think that's all my presentation. Thank you very much. We can have some discussion. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much for that interesting presentation. So I guess now we open for Q&A. So for those who want to ask questions, just raise your hand, and then maybe you want to introduce yourself. Okay, and then just ask the question. Okay. Maybe if I can just ask a very simple and short question. Can you elaborate a little bit on what is the difference between haqiqah and haq?
Yeah, this is just because this term is not very solid yet. We tried to propose in one of our articles on whether Islamic economic is it a science or a doctrine. So in the articles we propose this kind of terms, and we need a lot of feedbacks from us and on. So hakikah means that it is a fact of phenomena or realities which is in line with the truth, with the criteria of truth. So it's not only fact as it is, the fact as we see, but fact which is in line with the norms or with the values. So we call it as hakikah. So this is after the transformation just now. So because of one of the purpose of a theory is to transform the realities to certain things that we believe this is the correct things. So that is hakikah. And then the haq is the truth itself, right? Haq is the truth itself. So we can reach that, then we are reaching the convincing truths. Because the truth itself can be three types of truths. The first is the empirical truth, the second is the doctrinal truth, and then the third is the logical truth. So there are three truths. Logical truth is something which is logically sound, so this logical truth. And then empirical truth is if we can make a test or evaluation this as it is, propose certain test, this empirical truth. And then doctrinal truth is we evaluate things in our methodology, which is it must be based on the doctrine itself. It must be on the nas or the source. So this type of truths will unite in that doctrinal truth, logical truth, and empirical. I think we also discussed this from some in our theory, in our articles on theory appraisal, Islamic economy. Ladies first. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, thank you. So if we refer back to the time of the Prophet, when Islam came, thank you. When Islam came, the fact is not all are false facts. So there are some measurement. How do we see facts? So that is based on the Islamic doctrine itself, based on the nas or the nusus. So Rasulullah does not change everything, does not change every fact that is there in the Makkah. Only the facts that is against the Islamic principles that Rasulullah tried to change. Because in nama bu'istu yutamima karimal akhlaq. So some things, realities that is happening there at that time, and if it is in line with the norm, the Islamic norms or Islamic principle, then there is no changes. But the fact that is not in line, such as riba, as you mentioned just now, riba jahiliyah or exploitation or unfair in business dealing, and there are also many things. So that is Islam tried to propagate change, or to transform into an Islamic idea. So in the word of Bakir Sadar again, in the Kisaduna, we classify fact as two types: the false fact and the truth fact. So that is based on the principle itself, based on the nas. I think so. Yeah.
Sorry, just had two questions. I just little bit confused when you mentioned that in Islamic economics, subject and object we need to change. I mean, can you explain about that? Because the previous slide you mentioned about the object and the subject in Islamic economics kind of being changing, right? So, so glad you can explain on that. And secondly, you did not mention at all your opinion on the issue of rationality. Right? So maybe you can give your view, or I think you don't really believe in rationality. Maybe you go for kind of like institutionalist economic school, right? So different.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, subject and object. So what we mean just now is that subject matter. So not subject a person, but subject matter or object of study. Same thing, right? Subject matter and object of study of Islamic economics. So means that what we study. So that is the. But if we try to differentiate between subject and object in Islamic economics, then it's very clear, right? With regard to your second question, term of rationality, so that is maybe related to the subject or the person, the individual, the human being. So this is the value that we also try to clarify. What do we mean by rationality? Of course, when we clarify rationality, it cannot be in our perspective. It should be in the economics perspective itself. So how they define the rationality. So that's why once we later on try to Islamize rationality. It cannot be just like Islamic rationality, because the rationality itself has a value inside it. What do they mean by rationality? And then try to put Islamic rationality. So this is also in one of our paper, we said that there is conflicting worldviews between Western values inside the concept of rationality and Islamic values that we try to bring it into that rationality. So of course, when we say Islamic rationality, then the Western community will not accept that, because they have their own concept of rationality. So in that case, we have to find another concept, which is based on our tradition. And we have so many concepts that we can try to dig in from our source knowledge, such as we propose the concept of taqwa. Taqwa, whereby it is not on, taqwa is the same definition with the Islamic rationality that Islamic scholars try to propose. It is an enlightenment of rationality. So taqwa or muttaqin is the highest things that a person must try to achieve. So it is an enlightened person who is aware of himself, who is aware of society and society and the nature, and in God as well. So this is the kind of rationality that maybe we can try to promote concept of taqwa.
So you mean you believe in you accept the concept of rationality, but then it must be from the point of view of taqwa, and then you don't want to use the term rationality to present it.
Yeah.
Is it what you-
Yes, I think the some of key terminologies in the economics, such as rationalities, then interest, then what else? Self-interest and utility. We can find these key terminologies from our own sources, because this will be the object of study of our Islamic economics. So we cannot, I mean, for the object of study itself, we cannot borrow it from the other sciences, because each sciences has unique subject matter. Maybe
Yeah,
something like that.
Let me just okay, thank you very much for the interesting. Because most of the time, when it comes to the methodology part, we don't discuss too much on that. That's because we don't have much work that's been done in methodology. But Alhamdulillah, you brought so many things like, of course, the three different approaches to economic theory, the three considerations, and so many. So it opens a lot of rooms for us to study this theory.
Yeah.
So my question is, I think I have two questions. I'll ask one first. Maybe if I get the answer, maybe I don't have to ask the second question. Yeah. Okay. To what extent do you think the past and the existing literature of Islamic economics follow or lay down foundation on your discussion of theory building?
So far, how much or
To what extent? Yeah.
to what extent?
Yeah.
So the one is trying to compile everything. Yeah, it's very difficult question. Maybe I think we are,
Based on your readings.
yeah. So we miss something that can provide a breakthrough, I think. Breakthrough in the discussion of Islamic economy, something which is not just usual discussion. We refer back to the philosophical discussion or the discussion in the conventional mainstream economic itself. Their discussion are very dynamic, as we think, not as I said just now. In fact, the concept of rationality itself has been discussed throughoutly thoroughly in the Western economy. So the discussion is very dynamic, and we can also learn from that. And if we refer back to our discussion, Islamic economy is very not that kind of extensive discussion. Actually, we haven't touched something which is, I think, very significant and very in the discipline development. For this kind of subject matter or object of study. What is our object of study? What is the definition of Islamic economy? So everybody try to propose definition, but nobody will evaluate that proposal, or scholars try to. So this kind of dialogue is not really there in Islamic economic discourse, I think. Kind of we try to do it for Islam, try to review, give feedback because such as for example Masudam Chaudhuri keep proposing something, but nobody will take it. So just keep he is in his own life. This is different in the West. So when they propose something, another person will try to take it, try to digest, and then try to respond. Also, our paper, for example, nobody try to respond or try to give feedback, try to say that this is not the right way to do. So everybody just keep proposing things, but dialogue is not there. So I think this is something missing when we try to develop the foundation of Islamic economy.
Sure. The next question, something similar, but again, another big question. Of course, in the journey of theory building, based on your experience, yeah. Is there any discipline, not necessarily has to be economics. You can call it discipline, you can call it study, or some scholar even call system, right? You need to call as a. So is there any discipline, any system, or any study that has shown a positive change over into something that is actually religious something, not necessarily it has to be Islamic something, what about Christian something, Jewish something? Not necessarily, because we talk about this. Is there any success story in the history? Because I know that we are working on this, but have we seen any in the past?
Yeah, for Islamic economy itself is something which is not common as well in the Islamic tradition. Because if in the Pasalan Addiction books on history of Islamic economic science, history of Islamic science, the past there is no such thing as the needs to put Islamic in front of things or in front of discipline. Same thing in the Jewish or Christian. And when the Christian also encounter with the Islamic tradition, they don't put something that they try to Christianize as a Christian science, Christian thing. But I think this is because of why we need to have Islamic front of things. Because of I don't know why. Maybe we can try to, but this is a kind of agreement among the scientific community that this is to differentiate.
This is just to check our destiny. So we keep on working on it.
Yeah.
Will we be successful one day? Is there anything that we can see in the past? It's not necessarily economics, maybe psychology, maybe science, maybe sociology, maybe something else. Yeah. So kind of thing.
I think during our Islamic civilization, we already had that. Yes, just in the practical kind of economics, but not
In the
really
past,
subject.
You call it discipline, study, or system.
I think the name is one of the name is Tadbir al-Manzil. things already existed during the even Musina wrote about that. And then the other one is Iktisad, right? Iktisad, also the term already came in the past. So yeah.
It's very interesting because I mean, what I can try to understand from the Islam question is about the why we refer back to Islamic economics. Why do we need to put Islamic in front of economics? Not why not we try to develop other things or try to propose something else. So another answer is because the discipline itself now is very already solid. So economic is already solid. Psychology and sociology and other social sciences is already solid. That if we propose other things, then maybe it's not important. So this is a kind of maybe just perspective, some economics perspective, economic in Islamic perspective. Then later on becomes a discipline itself. So Akram Khan says that from Islamic teaching to Islamic economics. So previously it is a kind of Islamic teaching in economics, then later on become Islamic economics. But if we refer back to the Islamic scientific tradition, in Western scientific tradition as well, there is no trend at that time to put certain element or certain adjective in front of science. So physics, the West learn from Islamic tradition, but they call it as physics, not Western physics or Christian physics, and philosophy as well, and then many things. Because they try to develop something else as discipline. I don't know. Maybe Prof. Aslam can answer that.
Can I just go back to that first point? I think one of the reasons why maybe we see Islamic economics in the last 50 years as not having contributed a lot to the development of discipline is because of the time involved. If you go to economic thought, if you start, let's say, with Adam Smith, or you can even go before Adam Smith. So he was writing in the 18th century, and it took 2 centuries to come to, let's say, where 21st century writings are, maybe even more than 2 centuries, right? And in that period, there were even periods of 50 years or 60 years where there were debates on methodology. It's something in our literature they call method on strike. The debate between inductivists versus deductivists. So the time involved was very long. So in Western economic history, or at least the way the discipline developed in the West, they had 2.5 centuries to develop to what they were in the 20th century. But in Islamic economics, we started, if you want to look at contemporary Islamic economics, the thing started maybe in the 60s, 70s, but we didn't even discuss the foundations, even for 10 years, 15 years. We straight away went to banking, right? And all resources went there as well. So we didn't have that time to talk about the foundations. So I think that's one of the reasons why our maybe discourse is where it is. Having said that, it's up to us. Nobody else is going to do it. We don't expect the bankers to do this. We don't expect political leaders to start talking about methodology and philosophy. It has to be the academics, right? So it is our duty, and therefore I think we have to give more attention. So that's it. The second point about why we put the adjective Islamic, again, it's the position that the Muslim scholars find themselves. I may be wrong, yeah, but if you go to internet, any address you have, Like IIUM is iium.edu.my, right? But if you go to any US university, what is the address? Harvard.edu. That's it. They don't have to put the country there, right? Because they are leading in this area. So similarly, neoclassical economics doesn't call itself neoclassical economics. They say they are economics because they are the dominant school. And any other school that wants to talk about economics will have to put an adjective in front of it. Institutionalist economics, post-Keynesian economics, and I suppose Islamic economics. As Manzar Kaf said many years ago, he hopes there will be a day when we don't have to use Islamic economics, but the economics is ours, right? So Dr. Sadar said, Iktisaduna, our economics. So if we are able to develop the discipline to such a degree that our theories are better than what we have, then you convince more and more people to accept. So until we reach there, I think we're going to have to continue to use the adjective Islamic. Or maybe in Indonesia, you use Sharia in front of it. Yeah? What was the other one that now Prof. Tariqullah is promoting? Instead of economics as in ECONOMICS, he wants to use ECONOMYCS. Okay, why? Because he wants to bring ecology into our discussion to show that Islamic economics is also talking about sustainability, right? So he says economics with a Y. So it's up to us to develop.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Hafas, for the wonderful presentation. My name is Justin Olecic. I'm one of the assistant professors in the Department of Economics, for those who don't know. I do have a question, but I also received a call by people following online. There are certain questions in the chat that maybe can be addressed after I ask the question, which is related to the discussion. You have been in Israel, of course, for your research. And you have seen in Israel, so they do research, but perhaps they are. So, based on your current talk and the papers that are published on theory building of Islamic economics origins and objectives, and as others have raised, how do you perceive the industry, let's say, willing to accept the proposition of theory building that you presented in their practice, and then foster that kind of development, some banking, finance, and so on. So how do you see the linkage? Do you think that they would be willing to accept? As you mentioned, the issue is when some people discuss about certain aspects of economics or theory building, they have proposed ideas, but it has not been taken up. Compared to the West, they are targeting particular institutions that maybe even before the papers come out, the research comes out, they already discussed and said these are the things we need. Provide us these things, and we will take up your propositions to try to apply it. So, how do you see that happening? Let's say in Israel or other key institutions take up this research or research of other scholars in some economics and then apply it.
Yeah. Yeah, because there is a challenge right now. Because the industry, I believe that the industry, they have certain objectives, and when the industry call themselves Islamic banking industry or Islamic finance industry, they really want to attach it to the Islamic ideals. So, but at the same time, there are certain normal objectives, such as profit, etc. So the industry, they want to connect themselves with the ideals, but since the challenge is for the scholars that we keep saying this, but no alternative that we propose,
then the industry people must try to find themselves what are the values. So and then the Sharia, let's put it that way, able to provide answers. So they provide a practical or pragmatic answers to the industry, and then this is a kind of okay, agreed and collect. Then the industry will try to adopt this. But I think the people of industry, they open, because they are Muslims and Islamic banking practitioners and Islamic finance practitioners. I believe also they have certain objectives why they enter into this industry. So it is time also for us, for Islamic economies, as to promote something that can be applied. It can be applied by the practitioners. So whether we propose or we don't propose, so that is the problem in the Islamic economy. And when we try to propose, the industry will try to consider it. We try to whether they can buy it or whether they can do it or not. So this is a kind of interaction. So the problem with Islamic economics, this kind of proposals, it's not really there. Because the discussion also, if we see the literature in Islamic economics, we just try to provide discussion which is not a breakthrough discussion to the current situation. Let's try to validate or try to assess something which is already done by the practitioners. And in fact, we justify scientifically what they have done. So in that case, the industry will think that there is no need to change, or there is no need for changes. So it is our responsibility, I think, to try to develop concepts, try to propose things, and try to direct our industry. So this is what happens in the West. Because the scholars, the philosophers, the economists, they keep discussing, they keep debating, they have dialogue. So they keep proposing some things. Green economy, and then many things, SDGs. So these are coming from the economists, Human Development Index. So these are coming from the economists. Then they try to convince, and then the whole world will. So I think just that is our challenge. I think try to, based on our reading, how do we read the Quran? What we can propose? When we read the Quran, try to understand the concepts and try to understand the context of the life. What kind of proposal Islamic economists can propose? What kind of concepts? So Maqasid Syariah has been proposed so many times, but how to personalize and then to make this Maqasid Syariah? What do we mean by Maqasid Syariah? Hifzul. So these are the challenge for us to contextualize, try to operationalize things that the industry could understand. So that is the next challenge, I think, for Islamic.
Since you have touched already, Sharia, I believe you already have read the books, two important books. One is the Hafas methodology by Sheikh Johnson. One is the Hafas Sharia with applications in artificial intelligence and data analytics, if I'm not mistaken, by Professor Dal Bakr. So he is, of course, well-versed, expert, leader, Islamic banking, finance. How do you perceive these, let's say, two contributions by Sheikh Johnson and Dal Bakr? How do you see these methodological approaches being appealing and integrated to your theory building proposition?
Yeah. So Sheikh Yasir has two important books. One is the latest one, as you mentioned just now, about the Maqasid as methodology, and then systemic perspective on Maqasid Sharia. Okay. So this is the things that we also, Islamic economists, have tried to take it and try to put it in our writing in our perspective. Because Sheikh Jasir also tried to make it a multi-discipline, looking at the Maqasid and methodology is not only for Islamic economics, but for the other sciences that to connect all these things. But again, the response from the Islamic scientific community is not really there. Same things like the proposal by Bakar, Sheikh Prof. Bakar also proposed Maqasid in the bigger picture, because he also has another book, Sharia is Life, which is also very important before we try to read the Maqasid Sharia book. So the Sharia is Life, human being himself that need for the Sharia, try to, so at the end of the day, we must try to find the Sharia. So rather than, so human being must try, at the end of the day, will realize that human beings will need Sharia, and they will have tried to find the Sharia itself. So this is, I think, if you ask about the my comments on this, is very, this should be read also by Islamic economists. Then from that book, that kind of book, we can try to conceptualize or try to propose many concepts in Islamic economics, rather than try to modify the concept that is there in the mainstream economics. We can also, from this works, we can have another concepts that we can try to propose, I think.
Check.
Okay, this is from.
So maybe just select one or two because
Yeah.
they have already surpassed the 60.
So many questions from Dr. Mahyudi. Is
We
it,
can have a special session.
yeah, is it seriously good that trade economic in ideological way is ideology or doctrine important factor to viable growth, the theory of physics? If yes, Islamic economics should copy the influence of ideology. If no, then Islamic economics should not. Which one is better explanation to for the rise of interest in behavioral economics, ideology or epistemology? So it's very difficult question from Dr. Mahyudi.
Read the questions, and the one that you can answer, you try to answer.
Would ideological approach or science, as generally understood by the academic or scholarly community, enable some economic theory to gain more acceptance in scientific world? Do you have any example of the economic theory on relationship of variable that is well accepted by the academy? So I think Dr. Mahyudi also has read my articles on Islamic economic. Is it a doctrine or a science? So basically, how in that paper we try to see how Islamic economic perceive Islamic economics, how Islamic economists perceive Islamic economics. So Volker Ninhaus said that the scientific community of Islamic economic largely majority perceive Islamic economics to be a doctrine or to be a teaching rather than as a science. So he says that if that is the trend for the next 20 years, then Islamic economic is not moving anywhere, because if we treat Islamic economic as a doctrine or as an ideology, then you have to convince to doctrinize everybody. So this is something which is not appealing, or which is very difficult. So that's why we have to put Islamic economic as a science. So then the consequence that you have to develop your scientific dimension of Islamic economics. So we have to treat Islamic economic as a science. But then based on the discussion, we try to see why we should make science and doctrine in conflict. In fact, we can, because the economy itself, as we have proof, if we provide evidence now, economy itself is not free also from the doctrine. It contains certain doctrine. So it is also but the West try to make it as a science, have scientific procedures, etc. So doctrine and science is something which is cannot be made. We cannot separate between doctrine and science. The doctrine influence science, and science also, in a certain way, try to support the doctrine. So I think that's all.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hafas, for presenting your first paper and then for answering all the questions. Some of those questions are very difficult, but you tried your best. Yeah. So before we adjourn, so let us recite Tafsir Kafara and Surah Quran. So thank you for your attendance and your participation. So we hope to meet all of you again in the second session, inshallah. Assalamualaikum.
The second session. You can just do it in the CIE meeting room. It's good enough. The numbers.
We have to bring in more chairs.
Other than the chair. That's fine.
No, yeah.
Okay. But I can read out. I'm not sure what he's talking about. But this very best. Yes, now. It is possible. I don't think there's one system now the best decision.
During the selection. PG level.
That's why I think one best. Like whether it goes based on Viva comments or external
They're on.
publishing. Can you show more how exactly? As far as well, we made one thing by bring back. Saluki was there. That was not perfect. Yeah. Say competition. And something because this is then they, but this is the vision.